Okay, this how-to video is going to go through using Constraint Manager from within OrCAD Capture, so the front end. So this was introduced in 17.2 hotfix 49 and has been there ever since. And I'm just going to go through some of the basic flows that are available with this. So I've got an existing schematic here. It's just a simple schematic one page, and I've got no PCB associated with this file yet, so it hasn't been net listed. And if we select the design file and just look at the object properties, and then let's look at schematic nets, you can see that we've got a couple of the nets. So we've got some propagation delay on a couple of the nets here. We've got some impedance rules, and then we've also got a min line width and a min net width for a couple of the nets as well. So these were added where you would effectively, in the default way of a capture, you would select a net, right click, edit properties, and then add the properties that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this into the Constraint Manager style flow. So we'll start off, there's a Constraint Manager icon now, so we'll click on the Constraint Manager icon. You're going to get this kind of this default warning really just to pop up. You can disable this, I'm not going to, just to give you an idea about what you need to do from a flow point of view. So we'll click OK to that. And then you've got some options. We can either not migrate, we can migrate it. So if we've got a schematic that already has a PCB design and some constraints, we would need to go through this flow, which I'll go through later on. For starters, we literally don't have a PCB design app. We're just going to migrate the constraints from the schematic design. So you can pick the units that you want for your design. In this example, it's thousandths of an inch or mils. And I've got a design accuracy. I'll click OK. The first time we do this, what happens is we actually get the power net, so it's looking for the power signal or power pins, and it's going to give me effectively the power nets, and I can then assign a voltage to these. So I don't know, let's just go and set these as 5 volts for the V plus, and we'll do a minus 5 volts for the V minus. Click OK, and then what happens is now is Constraint Manager has now been launched. So this is the same as looking at Constraint Manager from within inside PCB Editor. So I've obviously got my electrical constraints, my physical, my spacing, my same net spacing. I'm not going to see the manufacturing ones because they're specific to the PCB. So if we start to look at some of the rules, so let's go to the min-max propagation delay. You can see there's my two nets that had the propagation delays rule set. So it's transferred the existing designs or the existing constraints into the Constraint Manager flow. If we look at, let's go to the differential pair, you can see we've also got a differential pair here, and there's those two physical rules here. And if we look at the impedance, we've also got the impedance rule. So it's actually transferring the properties that were assigned to the nets now into Constraint Manager. So once you're in Constraint Manager, you can create rules, you can do what you need to do. From a physical and spacing point of view, I haven't got any physical and spacing rules at the moment, so what I need to do is I need to import those. So I can either create a net list and back annotate the board, and that will give one method to do that, or the other way is if I've got a technology file, so you can actually create these quite easily. I can do file, import technology file. Let's just go and browse for a technology file. We'll bring the technology file in. It's going to generate the difference report, show me what the differences are, and then you can now see I've got a default rule and I've got a physical rule that's come in. So once I've got my rules, I can now start to create rules as I would normally. So right click, create a physical C set. Let's just call this PCS underscore front end, and I can set the values that I want, and then we can then go to the nets, and we can move nets into net classes. So let's just go and drag select all of these, and we will just add these to the class that's already there. So same operation of Constraint Manager as you would normally. We can apply rules if we wanted to, so let's go and set that rule for my physical rules. Spacing rules, I've got a default set of rules here, so let's just go and set these as let's make these 6 mils all the way along. So I've now specified a 6 mil rule, and you can apply rules to nets as you would normally. We'll actually go to the electrical rules as well, and let's just go and create a match group. So let's just minimize these. I'll create a match group of these lot. So we'll just create a match group. Match group 1's fine. I'm just going to specify a value of no delta, but a tolerance of 25 mils. So once I'm finished making the changes to Constraint Manager, then what I can do is I can effectively then save my design, and if we go to Tools and create netlist as we would normally, I obviously haven't got an input board. I've got an output board here. I'm going to open it in OrCAD PCB Editor, and I'm going to do the changes in Constraint Manager, click OK, and then this will go and create the netlist. It generates a difference report and then launches PCB Editor. And once I get to the design, if we just go to Constraint Manager, you can see that it's now effectively, it's brought my physical rules in, it's brought the rules, so it's created my net class there. There's the rule there. If we go to the spacing rules, there's the rules that I set, the electrical rules. So look at the match groups there. All the rules that I've done are effectively now been brought into PCB. Okay, so the next part of this video, what I'm going to do is I've got a schematic that already has a PCB, so there's some constraints already set in Constraint Manager. Let's go and open the board, just have a quick look at that. So we'll open the board with an OrCAD license, and we'll go and open the design. If I look in Constraint Manager, you can see that we've got some EC set there. It's effectively got some impedance rules on it. Have we got anything on the propagation delays? No, we haven't got any match groups or anything. We should have some physical and spacing rules. We've got a default rule there. So we've got a couple of overrides as well. So we've got some constraints in this board already. So what we want to do is bring that back. So what we would do is in the schematic, effectively we click on Constraint Manager. We're going to get this default warning that we start off with. So I'm just going to say OK to that. So in this example, I want to migrate, so I'm going to bring this design in from the PCB. So there's a specific set of steps that we need to go through. So it says update the PCB layout using the create netlist, and then back annotate the board, and then we can then open Constraint Manager. So we'll click OK to that. It's obviously got the default voltage assignments. So what we're going to now do is effectively we're going to create the netlist. So we'll go to Tools, Create Netlist. So default options, there's my board. I'm not going to overwrite the board. So use the same board name, and I'm not going to open the board file. I'm just going to say go and create the netlist, make sure that the boards are in sync. So I get a difference report. I'm then going to go to Tools and back annotate. I've got my board netlist directory, but the output file is there's my actual board file as well. So we'll click OK to that. So it's now brought the constraints back. So now my schematic and PCB are 100% in sync. So if I then launch Constraint Manager again, we then launch Constraint Manager, and then you can then see that it's brought in all the EC sets that I had. So this is really, really key. So it's an important step that you have to make sure. So obviously make sure you send the netlist to the board, and then bring the board information back. So you back annotate that information back to the schematic, and then you can get the two into sync. And this is kind of a continual flow. So from now on, if we need to make changes in the schematic, make changes in the schematic and Constraint Manager at the front end. We then create the netlist and send that information back to the PCB editor. So what we'll do now is let's just go and make a couple of simple changes. So let's go and let's create a couple of physical rules. Let's just call this diff. And we'll make these values here. And we'll just apply these rules. So let's just clear these overrides. And then I'll pick the differential pairs here, and we'll just apply that differential pair rule there. Maybe go to the electrical rules. Let's just go and make a match group. So if we pick these nets here, we'll create a match group with a value of 0:25 mils. So I've got a couple of changes that I've made in Constraint Manager at the front end now. So what we can then do is then save the design and then do what we normally do. So Tools, Create Netlist. This example, I'm actually going to open the board. So we'll open the board with OrCAD. Keep all the options the same. Show me the changes and show me a constraint difference report. You'll see obviously, so there's my differential pair changes, there's my match groups. Go to PCB editor and we look in Constraint Manager. So obviously there's my differential pair changes. Let's go to the electrical rules and we'll look at the propagation delay. There's my match group as well.